Victor. Thank you so much for coming in. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Natalie. I have been in Concord now for a long time. I came in the 90s, and when I came here, I was vaguely aware of the history, but it was it's just sort of a general way, shot heard around the world, Walden Pond, Little Women, whatever. But what really brought me here was that I had young children, and Concord has terrific schools. But what ended up happening was not just my children. I ended up learning a lot. When my career in printing and publishing came to an end, working in history in Concord was just a logical next step for me.
Did your previous career have anything to do with history and publishing?
In a broad sense, because printing and publishing are ways of telling a story. And when I started learning these stories, I wanted to share them. As I got deeper into learning about Concord, I started finding out about all these people who aren't in the history books, or at least the ones they give you in school. People like Mary Moody Emerson. Mary Moody Emerson was born here in Concord in 1774. She's the aunt of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And she was a self-educated woman, a brilliant woman, very independent-minded woman. Henry David Thoreau described her as the wittiest and most vivacious woman that he knew. And she played a vital role in the education and shaping the character of her nephew, Ralph Waldo Emerson. I started to learn about people like Ellen Garrison, who was born here, who she was the daughter of a formerly enslaved man and the granddaughter of another formerly enslaved man. And she grew up to be a teacher. She grew up to be a courageous civil rights activist. And these are stories that I was just excited to learn, and that I wanted to share those stories. To me, that's what history is all about. That history isn't just, okay, this thing happened. History is, why did it happen, and who were the people that made it happen? And that's what I want to share with people who come to Concord.
So obviously you've lived in Concord for a pretty long time. What sort of changes have you seen in the town, in the way that they tell history, and even just through your time working at the Visitor Center?
Well, in the time that I've been living here and more recently working for the Visitor Center, I have seen the stories that didn't used to be told, that used to be marginalized, brought into the forefront, like the stories of the women of Concord, like Mary Moody Emerson, the stories of the African American population, and particularly the stories of the first peoples of Concord, the ancestors of the present-day Nipmuc and Wampanoag people, the people who lived here for thousands of years and called this place Musketaquid. This was a thriving community long before it was called Concord, and long before English people lived here. Those are stories that weren't being told 25, 30 years ago and are being brought into the spotlight now.
On the tours, you often discuss Concord literary history, specifically during the 19th century. Out of Alcott, Emerson, Thoreau, and Hawthorne, who is your favorite to talk about?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I would say probably Thoreau, but he's somebody that people come here with a lot of preconceived ideas about, because his ideas, his writings are so far ahead of their time. Thoreau is kind of has these timeless ideas, and when people read about his life, they're sometimes surprised that he lived a very 19th century life, but that was the world he lived in. Yes, he had ideas that were ahead of their time, but when he woke up every morning, he was waking up smack dab in the middle of the 19th century. And so part of what the dialogue that I have with visitors about Thoreau is sort of understanding him not just as a brilliant writer, but as a human being and as an environmentalist, as an anti-slavery activist, there's a lot of dimensions to Thoreau. He did a lot of living in 44 years.
But what is your favorite fun fact to tell on tours?
Oh gosh, there are so many. One more recent history than the shot heard around the world or the community of authors is that in 1945, when the United Nations was founded, Concord was seriously discussed as a location for the United Nations headquarters. Edith Norris Rogers, who lobbied heavily to have the United Nations build its headquarters in Concord, but then in the end, the Rockefeller family gave the United Nations a very valuable parcel of Manhattan real estate, and that ended the discussion of Concord as a possible location.
Although we go over a lot on tours and at the visitor center, it's obviously impossible to see everything in Concord in one day. So what lesser known thing do you consider a must-see when visiting?
One thing that visitors often haven't heard about, and this speaks to our early conversation about the underrepresented population, is the Robbins House right across the street from the North Bridge. The Robbins House tells the story of African Americans in Concord, both during colonial times when there was slavery in Massachusetts, and then during the anti-slavery movement of the 19th century and the civil rights movement since then. So that's something people might not have heard of, but I would urge them to visit. And since they're not open in the winter, I would also urge them to visit the Robbins House website. They have a terrific amount of information on their website.
Do you have any last thoughts of other projects you're working on, tips for visitors, or just something that I missed?
No, well, when I began to get interested in doing this, I took courses with Jane Gordon. Jane Gordon taught the Concord Guide training course for many, many years, and she has probably forgotten more Concord history than I will ever know. But a few years ago, she retired and moved up to Maine, and I applied for the job of teaching that course, and have been teaching that ever since. And this year was kind of a nice treat for me, because for the past couple of years I've been teaching it on Zoom, and so this year I got to teach it in a classroom again, and that's much more fun, partly because a lot of the people who take this class are very well educated people, and they bring a lot of learning in addition to what I bring. And so when we're able to meet in a classroom, a lot of learning that takes place is students learning from one another, not just from me. So I really enjoy having that experience.
Thank you so much for coming to this interview. Have a nice day.
Thank you. And have a good day to all you watching.